Lloyd Roberts. I am the co-founder of Monkeys and Hats, and I am here with the most fabulous, fabulous resale woman, Kate Holmes. Kate, say good morning.
Thank you, Colleen. I'm tickled to be here, and I'm tickled to be able to have this one last chance to spread the wisdom, the philosophy of Kate as it appears to resellers. And I see that you picked up one of the most marvelous things that I'm going to urge people to do, and that is to look around you and to learn a lot from businesses that may not be exactly like yours. For those of you who were on the NARTS bus tour, 10 days ago? We saw a wonderful, wonderful display at Trading Places in Dublin, Ohio. In her foyer, she had wonderful handmade looking signs with her name on it. And if you look over Colleen's shoulder there, you'll see Monkeys in Hats. So there's always something to be learned, even when you've been in the business for a long, long time, like I have and like Colleen has.
There is always something to learn. So, Kate, along the lines of something to learn, let's learn a little bit more about you and your life. And how did you first learn about resale? And what was your what was your first experience with resale?
My first experience in resale was sweeping up the fuzzies underneath the racks in my mother's consignment shops. My mother opened a consignment shop on Long Island when I was 8 years old. About 2 years later, she opened a second one in our hometown. And every time I got a chance to go with my mother to the shop, I did. And my job, of course, was keeping the floors clean, lining the sales book, columns in the sales book, so we could keep track of who sold what and when and where and how. So I've been in this business for many, many, many years, and I am actually a second generation second-hander.
Second generation secondhand store. So just out of curiosity, how did your mom learn about resale? I'm always interested in, the history behind the history. How did did your mom start the very first consignment store in the country, or how did she learn about it?
Actually, consignment's been around since the turn of the last century, 1900-ish, when consignment was the business template for shops that sold women's handicrafts. Back in those days, a lot of women work outside the home, so they'd make tea towels and aprons and things of that sort, and they'd sell them through shops called women's exchanges. And that was the very, very beginning. But my mother actually started her shop in 1953, 1954, about 6 months after Encore in Manhattan, in New York City, opened. My mother went to them and said, will you teach me how to do this? And they said yes. My mother opened her shop on Long Island, which was about a 40-minute train ride from the Encore, so it wasn't any competition. And the rest is history, and here I am today.
Here you are today. So you obviously, did you ever have any other job? Did you ever work at an ice cream shop? You were like, nope, this is my life. I was born into this resale life. And did you do anything else?
Actually, I really annoyed my mother and hurt her feelings terribly when I did not want to take over her shops. Obviously, if you've got a 20-some-year-old daughter and 2 stores, you figure that she's going to carry them on. And I decided against that. I went into the corporate world. I worked for a junior sportswear chain. And in 2 years, I went from being the assistant manager of a single store to the assistant vice president of operations for the entire chain of 159 stores. Wow. So that was quite a leap. And I think maybe my experiences with that company led me to be blunt and as unforgiving perhaps as some people might think I am, because with 159 stores, my job was troubleshooter. Every Monday I was in the Manhattan offices of the business, and every Monday afternoon they would send me out to one of those 159 stores that was in trouble. And I had a week to turn them around. So I didn't have a lot of time to say, oh, it's so pretty in here. I may needed to say things like, your whole rack looks like heck, that kind of stuff. So that kind of formed my personality. And I kept that job until I realized that the men that I was, are we still on?
Yeah. Yep. It's just a little choppy, but you're still on.
Okay, sorry. I realized when I was Assistant VP of Operations that the men underneath me were being paid two-thirds more than I was. So I quit in high dudgeon and went off and decided I'm going to start something. I had a choice between starting a cafe or starting a consignment shop. I figured I'd better stick with something that I knew a little bit about.
You
And that's
opened your very first consignment store, and tell us about your first days, your first weeks, and your first year in business. Like, what was that like?
Well, I quit in August. I opened my shop on September 23rd, so I was good and ready to open the shop. I took over a location that had been a candy store in a small downtown that was a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, totally separate from the city. And I started doing a couple of things. I, first of all, didn't have money for a sign permit, nor did I have money to get a sign hung. So I learned that if you hung a sign inside the glass of your display window, there were no rules and regulations. So that's the first thing I did. And I painted the sign actually on a wooden shelf that I bought from a lumber company and hung it on chains. Then I started doing really, really intricate, beautiful window displays because that had been another one of my jobs in my lifetime as a display person for a department store in Pennsylvania. So I started doing these wonderful displays until about a month or so into the job, some customers came in the store and they said, oh, these prices are really reasonable. And I said, well, yeah, we're a consignment shop. And I explained what consignment was. They go, well, your window displays look way too good. So I learned to do my window displays a little less professionally, a little more down-homey. The first day that I was in business, I made $34.90.
Woohoo! So where did you raid? Did you raid your own closet? How did you get? Who were your very, very first consigners?
Well, 001 was me. 002 was my mother-in-law's charity group. She got everybody together and got things donated, and she brought them out to me. Number 3 was a person who worked under me at my old job. I forget the rest of them, but number 9 was the lady across the street in the insurance company offices, that kind of a thing. So we went from no consigners to 1,000 consigners the first year, and we kept up that benchmark of 1,000 new consigners every year from year 1 until year 20 when I sold the business. So in year 20, we had 20,000 consigners.
Wow, Kate, that is so awesome and amazing. So did you kind of set that as a goal every year? You just went, hey, every year we need 1,000 new consigners, and that was your goal?
Exactly. It was easy to get 1,000 consigners in the beginning because I didn't know what was going to sell. And I was kind of casting about for, what shall I have in this store? We carried children's clothes at that point. And then, of course, in year 20, we still had 1,000, but of course, they were much better quality, easier to sell consigners in that last year because we got more discriminating.
I got it. Wow, how interesting. All right. So, I mean, Kate, there's a flood of people just commenting. I'm gonna, go back and let you read them all because they're all for you. Just well wishes and amazing your amazing contributions to the resale industry are immeasurable. That's from Neil. Jana, thank you for all you've done for your industry. I've read your manual so many times. You'll be missed. I mean, just there goes on and on. So I will, if anyone has any questions that you have for Kate, definitely feel free to ask. This is Kate's very last show. She is going to go offline. Offline about resale. We'll still be able to stay in touch with her on a personal note, but offline about resale. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So Kate, my next question is, while you had your store open, what were some of the biggest changes that you went through that you saw that you had to, like go through that was your like you take a step back and go, wow, yeah, that was a big change that we had to do. Like what are some of the big changes you had to do?
Well, the first was the expansion into the space next door. So I went from 750 square feet to 1,500 square feet, which meant, of course, that I needed some help. So I had to hire some help. Again, I was fortunate. I had a person come to work for me who had worked underneath me in my original job back when I was a store manager. So she was going to school, so she needed some part-time work. And then the second person I had come work for me was my sister, which that worked out really, really well. Then we added a part-timer from the neighborhood, and we continued with those 3 employees for 9.5 years until the day my landlord came to me and said, you're out of here.
Oh,
So I had some big choices to make at that point. When you're being kicked out of a place that you've been in for 9.5 years and you're responsible for not only your livelihood, but the livelihood of 3 people who work for you, I had to decide, am I going to go smaller so that we don't have to worry about floor coverage? Am I going to go larger and increase my staff? Like so many of us, staffing has always been a problem. Getting people who work as hard as you do, who think the same way as you do. I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and finally I found a place that had been an old bar. And it had been a bar all the time that I lived in that neighborhood. And the bar owner did not want to rent to a used clothing shop. I mean, that was, tacky, tacky, tacky. So fortunately, again, a consignor knew the guy and vouched for me that I was a good business person and I would be able to pay the rent. My rent went from up about 5 or 6 times what it had been in the original location. So that was pretty scary.
wow. That's amazing. It is that growth, especially when it comes out of the blue, that you have to, like when a landlord comes and just simply says like you can't renew, um, that's got to be amazingly, amazingly scary. Amazingly scary.
And
All
it
right.
makes you think. It makes you think. Going to the more expensive location, of course, meant that more money in the beginning of the day was going towards overhead, and the profit time of day was going from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And that makes you kind of focus about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. I think it was about that time that I decided to write the manual.
So you wrote the manual that we have today back at that time when you owned your store.
Right, right.
So did you write it for you? Did you write it for your own store, or at that time did you know you'd be writing it for others?
No, I already had an employee manual and and a policy manual for my own store. This was to help other people open shops because my main purpose for the manual and for all the other products for the professional resale, all my other products, the main purpose of them was to raise the reputation of our industry, that we were not dusty, musty, et cetera, et cetera. The politicians, the reporters' favorite phrase for used clothing shops, oh, it's a dusty, musty old thrift shop. Well, we're not dusty, musty, are we?
Wow, no, not at all. So, Kate, really and truly, you've done a lot to pioneer this industry. So, you really were one of those that, came first. Like when we kind of look back at those who sort of paved the way, and by, I don't even, you paved the way, but I think you were also there with your machete, like paving the way to pave the way. So definitely that's pretty amazing, like really, really amazing. And so when did you decide it was time to sell and move on?
Well, I had opened my shop when I was 27. My longtime manager, who's Chris Swanson, many of you know her, was 27 at that point. And I thought, if I could do it at 27, I'm sure Chris can do it at 27. And she had the gung-ho-ness that you so seldom find in people who are working for you, and she wanted to do it. So because she had been working for me for so many years, she understood the business, she knew what it was worth, and it was a real easy process for her and I to agree upon the selling price, the terms, that kind of a thing.
Awesome. So Kate, as after you got out of being in your store all those years and you're sort of watching back, looking at the industry, you're still very involved at this point in time, but you're watching and observing more. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen happen to the industry as you are watching it?
I think we went from a mom and daughter type of idea that, oh, gee, it would be fun to have a little clothing shop, and gee, I can run garage sales, so I can have a used clothing store or a home decor store or a gift shop. I think we started with that. Then we morphed into a business that couples, husbands and wives, realized that they could actually start a store, work together, and support a family. They didn't have to have side jobs the way that mom and daughter did. So that was an interesting metamorphosis. And then, of course, along came all of the online businesses that saw what all of us were doing and how well all of us were doing, and decided they would take it to a global scale online, and persuaded lots and lots of venture capitalists to give them lots and lots of money. But I think the one thing that I really learned about after I stepped back from the day-to-day operations and stayed away and let Chris run her store her own way was that the longer that we, you and I and all the people listening here, the longer that we are in the business, the less we can rely upon our gut instinct. Because when we first started our stores, we were like, oh yeah, well, I really like to buy XYZ. And I really think we should be open. We shouldn't be open on Sunday because I go to church. We shouldn't be open on Wednesday night because my kid has swim meet. The longer that we're open, trying to rely upon those gut instincts does not work because we are now shopkeepers. We're not the general public. So we need to rely upon our learning, our experience, our observation, and as Neil would say, our figures, to make our decisions for us rather than saying, oh, well, it'll come to me. Doesn't work.
So great advice. And along those lines, Kate, give us like 3 pieces of your best parting advice to resale store owners for today and the future.
Okay. First of all, obviously, is the one I just said, which is to take a hard look at what you're doing and don't go with your gut, go with your figures, go with your observations, go with what people are saying to you, survey them, talk to them, get out there on the sales floor, listen to what they're saying. That's number 1. Number 2 is, especially if you're a consignment shop, but even if you're a buy outright or you're a donations only shop, you have to remember that to the person who is bringing you merchandise to sell, this is just another task in her day. This is just pocket money, in money, for her or him. To you, it's your job, it's your livelihood. If you don't get good stuff in, you're not going to make any money and you're going to go bankrupt and all of your staff are going to be out of a job and so on. So you tend to get a little bit more bossy with the people who are bringing things into you than they expect and that they will actually tolerate. So to remember that to the consignor, it is simply a small fraction of her life. To you, it's 50% or more of your life. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with suppliers, for sure. And the third thing that I wanted to say, what was it? Oh, this is something that I actually wrote down and put on my bedside table, so that every morning when I woke up and turned off the alarm to get into my shop, I had this big sign up. Okay, is everybody ready? Paper and pencil?
I'm ready to type. You paper and pencil. I'm here with my iPad ready to type.
or everybody hit your voice record. You need to be not efficient, but effective. I spent so many years trying to do 3 things at once, turning around and tagging those clothes and answering the phone and talking to that customer and dealing with the dirty dressing room, that I forgot that the whole point of being in business is to be effective, to have an effect, to make a change in your life, your business, your customer's life, your supplier's life. So effective versus efficient. Efficient can be abrupt, it can be cold, it can be, excuse me, I've got to go answer my comments on Facebook, I've got to go look at my Instagram, rather than stopping and listening to that person and nurturing along the relationship that you have with her or him. So effective, not efficient.
Hey, that was absolutely a very beautiful thing to say, and what a great way to end off. So you have just an outpouring of love and comments here on this page. I'll let you enjoy them and respond to all of them. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Kate, thank you for a year and a few months of our coffee time together. And, oh, yeah, we go, click. And really, truly, I've learned so much from you. And I know we didn't always see eye to eye on things, but I think that's a really good thing, because I think that I love your perspective and how and why you see things the way you do. And I just have always cherished our time together. So thank you. And
Well,
Kate,
I really appreciate your having me on your show and letting me talk to your audience on your private page. And I'm sure that you've got all sorts of wonderful people lined up to continue the Coffee with Colleen show. And I'll watch it, maybe.
yay! Well, we do. So yes, so tune in. Kate is officially retiring. And Kate, how long do people have to order the goodies off of your website?
You have until International Resale Day, which is July 18th, to order either the manual or PDFs that I sell on my site. I've been having people buying loads of them just for fear that someday they might want that how to run a furniture shop PDF or the kids shop or whatever. So please feel free to order those. They will be on the site until then. I'm kind of easing out a little bit, making sure that everybody has the tools that they need to continue on and to make their future as bright as I'm sure that Colleen's will be and that mine will be. I want to thank everybody. Oh,
no, what can we expect from you? What does the future hold for Kate Holmes?
Well, I've been writing a historic novel now for about 15 years, so maybe that'll finally get done. It's been great fun, but I need to concentrate on it. And I'm going back to my watercolors. I've always loved to do watercolors, so I'm starting back on that. And I have to go now today to buy some turquoise paint because I'm painting a parrot. Is that those blue parrots with the yellow shoulders?
Like a macaw? Is that called a macaw?
Yeah, macaw. I'm painting a macaw. Fortunately, I don't need to know his name. I just need to know what color he is.
Well, Kate, again, good luck to you. You're definitely an industry icon and a resale queen, and may your crown forever be shiny and blingy, as I'm sure it will. And thank you again. And we will see you on Facebook.
Bye now. Thank you all.